Alright, so in this video we're going to talk about the box model, and we're going to talk about margin and padding, as well as what a CSS reset is. Okay, we're also going to look at some of the default styling of the browser. So let's create a new file here called 06_box_model.html. And let's put in our head body tags, and for the title we'll say box model, margin and padding. And let's put in our style, and then for the HTML I'm going to put in a div with the class of box, which is just going to have an h3, we'll say box1, and then a paragraph with 20 words, so lorem 20. Alright, and then I'm just going to copy this down, so shift option or shift alt and then down, we'll copy it. And let's just we'll just change this to box2, and they both have the same class, okay, which is absolutely fine. We're just going to style them the same way. So let's save this and open it with Live Server. Open it in Chrome, and I want to open up our dev tools. So on Mac it's Command Option I, on Windows it's F12, or you can use your menu. So remember, this is the HTML over here, this is the CSS. So I'm actually going to just click on the div right here, the first div, which will give us the CSS, which by default just has a display block, because remember, divs by default are displayed as a block, meaning they go all the way across. And right here you're going to see a diagram of the box model, which makes it a lot easier to explain. So there's basically 4 layers. There's the element itself, which we can put a height and a width property on. By default, the width is all the way across, and the height is going to be however much content is in it. If I add a bunch more paragraphs, it's going to extend more. Or I can just set a height in CSS. Then we have padding, so we have spacing we can put here. Then we have the border. Okay, we looked at the border properties in the last video. And then we have the margin. Now, the margin and padding, the spacing, is, some people get this confused when they first start, but all you really have to remember is the margin is the outside of the element, or the outside of the border. The padding is the inside. Okay, so to give you an example, let me just add some styling for the box. Okay, so we're going to say box, and we're going to say background. We're going to give it a color of light gray. Okay, and then we'll give it a border, let's say 2 pixels, gray, solid. And we went over this stuff in the last video. So now you can get a better picture of the box model. So we have the content, then we have the padding, and then we have the border, and then outside of the border is the margin. Now, notice that there's some spacing here, there's spacing here, there's spacing here. And there's even spacing around the sides. That's because the browser has default margin and padding on certain elements. So if we grab the selector tool here and I hover over the H3, you'll see that there's some orange areas here where the space is. That's the margin. And if I go over the paragraph, we have some margin, and even the body. If I go right, actually it's not going to let me show it. But anyways, the body has some margin as well. So let's click on this, the H3, and then over here you'll see the styling. So this margin block start, margin block end is basically margin top and bottom. And it has a value of 1em, and em is a relative unit. It's relative to the number of pixels of the font size of its element, of its parent container. And if you don't understand what that means, don't worry about it. If you want to see the computed pixels, you can actually click on computed, and it'll show you that the font size and the margin on the top and bottom for the H3 is going to be, it's 1872 pixels by default. If we click on the paragraph, you'll see that it has a margin on the top and bottom of 16 pixels. If I click on the body, you can see it has a margin on all sides of 8 pixels. And there you can see the orange around the whole body. Okay, so these are all default browser styles. And there's other elements as well, like a UL, an unordered list, and an ordered list. They both have margin on the top and bottom, and they have a padding on the left of, I believe, 40 pixels. So this is just stuff that you're going to run into, and you can overwrite those values, obviously. Like I could set for paragraph, I could set margin to 0 and get rid of that. And I can actually show you that real quick. So if I say box paragraph and set margin to 0 and save that, we go back. Now you'll see that there's no orange when I hover over the paragraph. And if we look at the styles, you can still see the default, but this overwrites it, what I just did. Okay, now if you want to take away all the default styling, you can do that with what's called a reset. So I'm going to get rid of that, what I just did, and I'm going to create a CSS reset. Okay, and there's different ways to reset. You can reset margin and padding, font size, borders. There's actually like popular reset files that you can use, like Eric Myers has a reset file that's pretty popular, but the easiest way to do it is just to use an asterisk, which selects everything, and then just say you want margin to be 0 and padding to be 0. Okay, so we're just setting the margin and padding to 0 for everything. So let's save that, and this is on all sides. Okay, top, bottom, left, and right. So if we go back now, notice there's no spacing anywhere, not even on the body, not even on the side here. And if I grab the selector tool, there's no orange, there's no green, which is padding, there's just no spacing at all. Now, it's up to you on if you want to use a reset or not. I do sometimes. It really depends on the layout. But if you do use it, you have to remember to add all of your own margin and padding, because now if I add another paragraph under this one, it's going to be right next to it. It's not going to have that default spacing that the browser gives it. Same with the heading. Usually you'll want some space here. It's not there anymore. We will have to create it if we're going to keep the reset. All right, so I just wanted to kind of explain how the default margin and padding works, also the structure of the box model. So now let's look at some properties that have to do with margin and padding. So I'm going to add a width to the box as well. Let's do width 500 pixels. And let's say I want padding on all sides. So I'm going to put a comment right here, and I'm going to say padding on all sides. So we would just use padding, and then we could do, let's say, 20 pixels. So this will put 20 pixels on all sides. You can see top, and notice the green. If I use the element selector and we hover over it, we see the green. That's actually the padding. Okay, and you can see that it's 20 pixels on all sides for both, obviously, because they both have the class of box, which is what we styled. Now, when we add padding, if we keep the box sizing the way it is now, the box sizing property, it adds to the width of the entire thing. All right, and to just give you an example, if I say padding 120 and we take a look, the width of this is it's not 500 pixels. It added to that. It's 500 pixels plus the padding, and that's not usually how you want to do it. Usually you want to keep the width at the right width and then just add the padding. So to do that, you want to add to the asterisk right here a box sizing property. Okay, and you want to set that to border box. So now if I save that and we go back, we still have 120 pixels padding, but the box is still 500 pixels. It just pushes it inside, okay, as opposed to adding it. So let's put that back to 20. I just made it that big just so you could tell that the width was larger. So we'll put that back. And the next thing I want to do is show you margin, because right now there's no margin and these are kind of stuck together. So margin is going to be spacing around the border, on the outside of the border. So let's add, let's say margin on all sides, and we'll say margin 20 pixels. And if we take a look and we use our element selector, see the orange, that's the margin. The green is the padding, the orange is the margin. In fact, if I click on one of the divs and we look at the box model, it'll show us all the values. 20, the border is 2 pixels, the padding is 20, and then the width here. Okay, so just remember that, margin outside, padding inside. And it doesn't matter if you have a border property set or not, it's still going to be relative to the box model. All right, now these properties that we've used, padding and margin with just one value, it's putting the same on all sides, but there may be cases where you want different values on different sides. So I'm going to go down here and let's say padding per side. Okay, so we can use padding top. So let's say on the top we want 10 pixels. And let's do padding bottom. Actually, I'm going to do top, let's do right, and I'm doing this in a certain order for a reason, and I'll show you that in a minute. So padding right, let's say we want 20 pixels. Let's do padding bottom, we'll do 10 just like the top, and then left, we'll do 20 just like the right. Okay, now this is going to overwrite this. And that's something that I really haven't talked about yet. When you have the same properties, the ones that are further down are going to overwrite the ones that are further up. Okay, so all this padding here is going to overwrite this one. So even if I leave them without commenting this out, this is going to take effect. So let's take a look, and you can see now there's less padding. If you look at the green, there's 10 pixels on the top and bottom. There's 20 on the left and right. So if you want to do this, but you don't want to have 4 different properties, you can shorten this, just like with most cases, like you saw with the border and the background. There's shorthands. So let's say padding shorthand. Now when we do this, there's a certain order to the values. So it's going to be this, just like I did right above: top, right, bottom, left. That's why I did it in this order. So if we say padding, it's going to be in that order. So let's do top 10 pixels, right 20 pixels, bottom 10 pixels, left 20 pixels. So if I save that and we take a look, it's going to be the same thing. So this is just a shorthand for this. Does the exact same thing. Now we can make this even shorter because the top and bottom and the left and right are the same. Top and bottom are 10, left and right are 20. So let's say padding shorthand. So we can actually just have 2 values. One will be top, bottom. One will be left, right. So we'll say padding. Top and bottom we want 10, left and right we want 20. Okay, so this is the same exact thing as this, which is the same exact thing as this. So we're just shortening it up. Okay, so if we look at it, we get the same exact thing. We have the 10 on the top and bottom, 20 on the left and right. So hopefully that makes sense. You can add padding all these different ways. Now with margin, it's the same exact thing. Okay, same exact thing. I'm actually going to just copy all this and change it to margin. So margin top, right, left, bottom. This same thing, same order. So let's grab this and let's put this down here and just change this to margin. Change these to margin. Margin. Okay, so that's going to do the same exact thing. Let's save that. If we take a look now, we have 10 pixels top and bottom margin, 20 left and right margin. Okay, so yeah, I think that's all I want to do here. One other thing, usually since we did a reset, we'd probably want to separate the H3 and the paragraph a little bit. So what I would do is just add box H3, and I'd probably add like padding bottom 10 pixels, 5 pixels, whatever it may be. Whoops, what happened here? Oh, I'm inside. I'm inside this style. Okay, so let's check that out, and now we have spacing under the heading. Alright, so that's it, guys. In the next video, we're going to start to talk about floats, okay, so we can align things. Now, ultimately, when you align stuff, you're usually going to want to use Flexbox or the CSS grid, but we're not going to talk about that stuff just yet because that stuff is a little more complicated and it's much newer. I want you to get a handle on just old-fashioned floating before you start to deal with flex and grid and stuff like that. All right, so I'll see you in the next video.
Living life, every day, late at night, not okay. All I want, and I pray, all I need are some better days. Fuck me, I'm looking in the mirror, so foggy, but I've never seen clearer.